Alright, this lesson is going to be about factor lists, not only how to write them, but the second half will be using factor lists to find greatest common factor. Okay, so to make a factor list, you always want to use your multiplication chart and divisibility rules to identify all of the factors. In our example problem, we are going to look at the number 40, and you're going to have to imagine me using my divisibility rules and my multiplication chart. The first one that we always start with is 1 and 40. I always like to write the smaller number on the left because it helps me go least to greatest. The next number, since I'm trying to use strategy, trying to do this instead of guessing and checking, do it in an organized manner, I know that 40 is an even number, which means it can be divided by 2. So then, since I'm pretending that I don't know my multiplication facts, I look at my multiplication chart. What do you know? 20 times 2 is 40. So that gets me the right side of my t-chart. Next, my divisibility rule for 3 is if I add the digits together, if that can be divided by 3, that sum, the whole thing can be divided by 3. Well, 4 plus 0 is 4. 4 cannot be divided by 3 evenly, so 40 cannot be divided by 3 evenly. Next, I look at the number 40, and I know that my rule for 40 is, for 4, dividing by 4, if I can divide the number by 2 twice, it's divisible by 4. Well, 40 divided by 2 is 20, and I can divide 2 again, so it is divisible by 4. 20 divided by 2 is 10, so 4 times 10 is 40. Next number I need to look at is 5. I know that since 40 ends with a 40 ends with a 0, doesn't end with a 5. It can be divided by 5. And then I have to think 5 times what is 40. I can use my multiplication chart again, and I find that 5 times 8 is 40. Next number I check is 6. Divisibility rules say if it's divisible by 2 and 3, it's divisible by 6. I have a 2, but I don't have a 3, so it's not divisible by 6. Then I think of the number 7, and I could actually try dividing this one out or checking my multiplication chart. 40 is not divisible by 7, so I don't put that one. And then I come to the number 8. Well, what do you know? 8 is already on my t-chart, which tells me I've gone through all of my possible numbers. The last part then, since it's a factor list and not factor pairs, is I need to write all my factors least to greatest. Since I've written all my smaller factors on the left, it helps me with this. I can go right down on the left side, so it would be 1, 2, 4, 5, 8, 10, 20, and 40. And that is a factor list, and it's least to greatest, and that is all I need to do. Alright, the next part of this video is going to be using factor lists to find greatest common factor. If you're only here for factor lists and not GCF, you can end the video now. If you'd like some more information on how to find the greatest common factor using factor lists, continue on. The problem we will be looking at is find the greatest common factor of 40 and 24. In order to find the greatest common factor, we do have 3 steps, and step 1 is to write the factor list for each number least to greatest. Well, we just found the factors of 40 earlier in this video, so I am going to use from there. So if you don't remember how I got these numbers, you can look back earlier in the video. We had 1 and 40, 2 and 20, 4 and 10, and 5 and 8. Okay. Then I'm going to write my factor list. So I'm going to write 40, because that's the number I'm looking at, and it's 1, 2, 4, 5, 8, 10, 20, 40. Kind of ran out of room there. So now looking at the factors of 24. Come on. There we go. Excuse me for a second here, just organizing some stuff. Now we look at the factors of 24. I know that I can have 1 times 24 is 24. I know that 24 is even, so I can have 2. 2 times 12 is 24. If I add 2 and 4 together, 2 and 4 of 24, I get 6, which tells me 6 is divisible by 3. 24 is divisible by 3, so 3 times 8, looking at my multiplication chart. And then do a little skip counting, 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24. So 4 goes into 24, 6 times. 5 cannot go into 24, and then at this point I'm at 6, which is already on my chart, which means I've gotten all of those factors. So I'm going to write this one as well. So 24, the factors would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 12, and 24. So step 1 is to write the factor list for each number, least to greatest. Okay, continuing on from step 1. Step 2 is to make sure your factor lists are lined up, and then you circle the common factors. Because I'm on a digital interface right now, I am going to highlight our common factors instead, just to make it a little bit easier instead of some messy squiggly lines. So looking at the factors of 40 and looking at the factors of 24, we want to identify what factors do they have in common. Well, first we can notice that they have 1 in common. Each factor list is the number 1. They each have the number 2 in common. Now, this is where it gets a little funny. Now, 24 has a 3, 40 does not. So we can't highlight 3s, but each of them actually has a 4, and it is okay to highlight kind of at an angle like that. We keep going. 40 has a 5, 24 does not, 24 is 6, 40 does not. The next factor they have in common is an 8. And then if we look at the rest, we have 12 and 24, 10, 20, and 40. None of those are in common. So step 2, simply to circle, or in my case highlight, all of the common factors that each number shares. If we had a third number, like some of our problems in the future, we would just have that third factor list down here, and we would do the same thing. We'd have to match up what factors do all 3 numbers have in common. For our example problem, we're only looking at 2 numbers, so we compared what factors or common factors do those numbers have. Alright, final step, step 3, is simply to identify the greatest common factor and write your answer statement as the GCF of blank and blank is blank. So in our last step, in our first step, we listed the factor lists. Second step, we highlighted or circled what common factors they have. Now we're just going to look and identify which of those factors is the greatest. So of the numbers 1, 2, 4, and 8, we know that 8 is the greatest, so we would say that 8 is the greatest common factor, and then we put it into our answer statement because we can never just say 8. We need to know 8 what, or what are we comparing to get 8. So we say the GCF of 40 and 24 is 8. And once you've written that statement, you've completed your problem. I hope this tutorial helped, and if you ever need any questions, please let me know.